Turning our attention to Geneva now, where talks with Iran on its nuclear program are now into an unscheduled third day. Today's session is being held after progress was reported in yesterday's talks, and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry took part in those talks that ended near midnight last night. Under one deal being floated, Iran would freeze expansion of its nuclear activity, and in exchange, it would get limited relief from international sanctions. Jim Walsh is an expert in international security and a research associate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Security Studies program, and he joins us now from Watertown, Massachusetts. So, Jim Walsh, in your view, how significant is it that the talks are continuing into this unscheduled third day, and these are high-level talks, and China and Russia have joined the negotiations?
Yeah, I'm pulled in two different directions about this, that it's gone to a third day. You know, on the one hand, these originally were simply supposed to be technical talks among technical experts that then would set up a follow-up meeting where the big boys, the heavy hitters, would come in, the foreign ministers, and sort of sign a document and appear before the cameras. But when this meeting started, they made a lot more progress than they had anticipated, and it looked like they might get a deal. And so you had Secretary of State Kerry and the other foreign ministers fly to Geneva in anticipation of being able to work something out. And then they get there, and it turns out France has problems and wants its concerns addressed, and so things have then slowed down. And so we might have a situation of sort of raised expectations followed by progress, but no deal, a deal that might get pushed off to another meeting. But so I don't know whether to be happy or disappointed. The fact that they're meeting a third day shows that the sides are serious and they feel a sense of urgency and want to get it done. I think that's positive, but it may not happen this weekend.
Okay, you say that France has to some extent thrown a monkey wrench into the discussions. Why France?
You know, I think there are a couple of things going on, and part of it, at least, is that when Hollande was elected, he selected as his nuclear advisor someone I know well and other U.S. nonproliferation experts know well. And he's someone who's known as a notoriously tough guy. I won't call him a nonproliferation hawk, but a tough guy on these issues and a skeptic. So, and also, quite frankly, France has come out and says the concerns it's pressing are the concerns that Israel has. And so to some extent, they seem to be carrying Israel's water on this for whatever reason. But they're concerned about a reactor, a heavy water reactor that might be part of a weapons program at some point down the road. Now, Iranians told me when I met with the foreign minister and others in New York in September that they're happy to address this issue, but this agreement we have is going to be an interim agreement, a small agreement that paves the way for a broader agreement, and they wanted to deal with this reactor issue in the broader agreement. France wants to deal with it now, but if you're going to deal with it now, then you have to adjust the sort of sanctions relief. What is Iran going to get to compensate for the fact that it's addressing this issue? So that's what they're knocking heads in those hotel rooms, boardrooms in Geneva, is to try to work out these last-minute changes.
So meantime, of course, Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu is watching these discussions and has, of course, come forward and said Iran seems to be getting the deal of the century, and to paraphrase what he's saying, the West is getting duped. Is this response perfectly expected from the Israeli Prime Minister?
It is perfectly expected from the Israeli Prime Minister. First of all, the Israeli Prime Minister doesn't know what the deal is, right? So all this criticism is coming in advance of actually knowing what the content is. And it's clear from, as we were just discussing, we don't know what the deal is because they're still negotiating it and may have to negotiate. I think this is a preemptive attack, if you will, on the diplomacy here. His position has been all along that he wants a deal that prohibits Iran from having any nuclear infrastructure whatsoever. Zero enrichment, zero nuclear facilities. That is just not going to happen. And when you insist on that as your negotiated outcome, that's the equivalent of a poison pill. That's your way of saying, I really don't want a negotiated settlement. All I want is pressure and sanctions. But I think the rest of the international community has come to consensus on this, and Israel's isolated itself, or at least the Prime Minister has isolated himself by insisting on this, because I think the P5, all the Britain, France, U.S., China, Russia, plus Germany are in agreement that a deal is doable, and that deal will include some ongoing enrichment, but at a very reduced level for Iran. And in return for that, Iran will do certain things, greater transparency and other restrictions on its program. But the idea that we can have suddenly after 10 years an 18,000 centrifuges that are just going to tear it all up.
Right.
That's just not going to happen.
I know when we began the conversation, you were saying you didn't know quite how to read into the fact that it has now gone into this third day. Maybe good, may not be that great, but even so, the fact that these high-level talks are taking place, and you say, and all of this is being taken seriously on both sides. For you, watching the history of this, how remarkable, how significant is even that?
Yeah, so let me speak personally about that. I think it's huge. It's huge. As a colleague of mine pointed out, the U.S. and Iran, in direct bilateral negotiations, have talked more to each other in the past 3 days than they've talked to each other in the past 3 decades. And they made real progress. And this is an issue, the Iran nuclear program, I've worked personally now for over 13 years, more than a decade. So if we can put this on a positive track, I'm anxious to have that happen. And so that's an exciting prospect. And that's what makes these little things, these little glitches, maddening for folks like me, because you're so close. And this is a relationship, Iran-U.S. relationship, where we've been close at different points. And at every juncture, people have found they've never missed a possibility to miss a possibility. We've frittered away chances on one side or the other as things have fallen apart because people weren't ready. We are very close to a very important deal, and so I'm hopeful, but I'm anxious.
Okay, we'll watch closely. Jim Walsh, good to talk to you as always. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.